acknowledge the members of the commission that are here. Raymond Torres, if you just put your hand up. Thank you, Raymond. Leo Plouffe, David Fontaine, Holly Walsh, and Seth Hamilton. Thank you all for attending. This is going to be a very interesting meeting. We also have two guests here that I'd like to introduce. We have Dana Borelli Murray from the Highlander Institute, and we have John Bellotta from RISD, which is the Rhode Island affiliate of the International Society of Technology Educators. Thank you for coming today. I would like to welcome you to our September meeting of the Joint Legislative Commission on Blended Learning, or as we were formerly known as the Joint Commission on E-Books or Textbooks. So I'd like to give you a little bit of a history lesson because we've come down this path a long way, and we've learned a lot of things, and we've modified our direction and in a positive way. And Holly's going to give us the roadmap for where we are today and where we're going, but I'd like to tell you about how we got to where we are today. This commission began this journey along with our partner, the Rhode Island Department of Education, back on May 2nd of 2011. If you recall, we were looking at the cost of textbooks and the need for improved standardization and improved distribution. We quickly learned that the leading edge schools were moving away from hard copy textbooks and were using free content on the cloud or the internet. So, knowing that or learning that, we invited leading edge experts to share with us what they were doing with e-learning. Our first aha moment was when Nehru Khoshla of CK12 shared with us how schools in the San Jose area were using laptops and iPads to access lessons and free text on the cloud. So she traveled out here and made a presentation to us. And fortunately for us and for the taxpayers of Rhode Island, all of the people who have come here have traveled at their own expense to share with us their best practices. So we really don't have a budget, haven't needed a budget, and we have been able to do some good things without a budget. So I thank you all, members of this commission, for your hard work and dedication in that regard. Other experts, or pioneers as we call them, presented their experience as they moved from textbook blended learning using different approaches. We heard from McGraw-Hill. Of course, they're in the textbook business, but they also are selling digital content, as well as other teaching and frontline administrators and professionals from around the country regarding their lessons learned. And we have been stealing shamelessly since day one from what other people are doing and doing successfully. But the breakthrough meeting was the presentation by the Digital Excellence team from the state of Maine. Opening remarks by then Governor, now U.S. Senator Angus King, made it very clear that he and his administration were fully committed to blended learning by placing a digital device in the hands of students throughout the state school system. And they've had tremendous success in doing that. All the students in junior high school received laptops, and they're in the process of fanning that out through high school. And the plan is to have that throughout the statewide school system. The Maine team, M-A-I-N-E team, demonstrated the progress made at as each junior high student had their own take-home device to use as a tool to access digital content and research subject matter. So their homework was available to work on anytime they had this device in their possession. It turns out that this movement of one-to-one student device is now sweeping the country. Many school districts are avoiding the cost of textbooks by using these digital devices. These devices place the world at the fingertips of our students. They get outstanding, no-cost data, textbook data, current information, and learning tools where and when they're needed. Today, you will see how this commission has worked with the Rhode Island Department of Education to learn best practices and to use them to develop and plan to accelerate and improve learning among our students in Rhode Island. Holly Walsh of RIDE, our hero, who has done the heavy lifting since we convened this commission, will present the roadmap. In order to conserve time, I would respectfully request that we hold the questions, if you can, till the end, because we'll be able to go back and look at each individual slide. But this roadmap really represents what we've learned and where we're going, because this issue has grown and many facets have been added, but it's very exciting because this is changing the face of education in Rhode Island, and we're going in a very positive direction, and it's great to have be partnering with the Rhode Island Department of Education, because we're all working together on this, and it's been a great team so far, and I expect it to continue. So Holly, if you would show us what you got, please.
Absolutely. Thank you, Senator. So this is the agenda that I put together just to guide our thinking and think about where we've been and some of the steps moving forward. So we'll start with just a quick recap of some of the items that Senator O'Neill touched on, and then look at how we're speeding up a little bit as we jump onto the different roads ahead of us. We'll jump onto Route 1 and then to Interstate 95, and then look at that larger map ahead of us. So to start us off, it started with Senator O'Neill's idea around textbooks and how quickly they became obsolete, the cost associated with them, not to mention the weight associated with carrying those in a backpack. And very thoughtfully asked for input from various different folks. Did a lot of different research. We brought in experts. As we started to dive into the conversation, we understood how multifaceted it really was. And we knew that we needed to get a lot of information and a lot of questions answered before we dove into solutions. And so we invited several experts to join us. We've done an environmental scan of Rhode Island and looked closely at a lot of different things that are going on and happening across the state. And so as we looked at it, you could see how multidimensional it gets beyond just looking at textbooks. I'm not sure why that jumped out. Let me jump back in. We looked at the devices themselves. We talked about various different devices that were being used in other countries, or in other states and in other countries, and how folks were tackling it. We had Maine come down and talk about their solution at the statewide level. We looked at our model schools and our new charter schools that were opening up and talked about the various different educational models. Once you have access to that technology, what does it look like, and how is teaching and learning different? Meanwhile, we were implementing our infrastructure, the wireless infrastructure in all of our schools, which is now in place in the majority of our schools. And by the end of this calendar year, I believe that 100% of our schools will have wireless infrastructure in all of the classrooms, which is really exciting and has opened a lot of different doors in thinking. And then certainly around professional development, we have various different organizations that have really been providing professional development to all of our educators across the state. And there was this focus around blended learning, digital learning. How do we incorporate it? How does it make teaching and learning look and feel different? And we noticed that there was this cultural shift that was happening. There was a lot of different people involved in the conversation, and that hadn't been the case up until then. It had been the high-flying folks that were very motivated by technology, that saw the need for it, or John in his role as a technology director. Folks such as that were deeply involved in the conversation, but the culture shift started to begin a few years ago, and really many people were involved in the conversation. We realized that there were a lot of supporters and a lot of people that were thinking about and trying to figure out ways to make it happen and make it happen efficiently. And obviously that goes right to the point around funding and how much are we able to handle? What resources do we have available? And so in our environmental scan, we really looked at where folks were on that continuum. Were they creating the conditions for success? Were they deep in the planning? Were they implementing already, and, or were they already starting to figure out ways to improve and get better? But looking at that in this linear fashion, it really doesn't tell the story the right way. So I rearranged it a little bit, and certainly we want students to be at the center. And what we found in our environmental scan is that was in fact the case, that every school and every district that is having this conversation puts students at the center of that conversation. And they think about what it's like for that individual student. And then they create the conditions for success, the plan and implement, and then assess and understand what needs to change so that they can improve. And there's some common elements that keep coming up. Certainly professional development for our educators, budgets and resources. What does the teaching and learning and the curriculum look like when you have access to technology? How do you use your time differently? What technology do we need to put in place? And what infrastructure and broadband considerations do we need to think about? How do we use data now that we have access to it? And then who do we partner with in our community for academic supports? So it's a much more multidimensional and cyclical process rather than a linear process. And what we found out is that we've got some really amazing things going on in the state. We had our model schools that we helped to fund and get going, and so we have that in the state. We can look closely at our colleagues that were thinking about it deeply and working hard on it. Pleasant View Elementary was our first, followed by Wakefield Hills Elementary, which is in West Warwick. And then we also had 2 charter schools that opened up, both at the high school level, Skip Noel Leadership Academy and the Village Green virtual charter school. And those gave some real concrete, in the state of Rhode Island, examples of how do you do it, what does it look like, how do you fund it, what kind of professional development is needed, what does the curriculum look like, how do you use your time, and so on and so forth. Well, lots of people were involved in that conversation in their own districts and in their own schools. And we have actually 10 districts that worked really, really hard over the last 2 years and were engaged in this very deep conversation about what's necessary. The end result is this September we have 10 districts that are implementing one-to-one large-scale solutions, not just at a school level, but thinking about it on a district level. And how do we phase that in at a district level? You may have seen in the news West Warwick just rolled out their Chromebook program, which puts Chromebooks in the hands of students from K to 12. They are able to take those Chromebooks home and access information and resources at home, and fabulous program that they've put in place. Lots of hard work to get to that point. Other districts are phasing it in at different levels. So for example, Foster Gloucester is starting at the beginning of their middle school and at the beginning of their high school, and each year it will grow up with the students. So they'll add in more technology as the students progress and as they understand how it changes teaching and learning. Charahoe is starting at the high school level, and all of their students have MacBook Airs now. They rolled that out just before the start of school, and the middle school teachers received their laptops this year, so they'd have that full year of planning. And then the middle school students will receive their MacBook Airs the following year. It's interesting how they were able to do it. They were able to do that change, bring in those resources and access to technology with a shift in thinking around budgets. And so they're not changing their bottom line, but their budget looks very different. The thinking behind it, the way that they've lined things up is very different, all with the student at the center there. The student is, what is that experience going to be like for the student? Why are we doing what we're doing? Followed up behind these 10 are several of the districts, some that are still in that deep planning phase and could very well, within the school year, implement plans of their own. And then everyone, with bar none, are working on various different creating those conditions for success. And so whether they may not be implementing a full-blown out version of one-to-one program, they are certainly working on those elements and thinking about how do we center and position things a little bit differently. And so now we hop onto the interstate and onto 95, and we gather some momentum and speed, and we accelerate it in Rhode Island. We're very, very fortunate that we have a lot of people involved in the conversation in our professional organizations, in our educators, in our students involved in the conversation, with our legislators, such as Senator O'Neill, with our business leaders, and all across the state. What we need to do is make sure that we're doing some purposeful planning, and we're not just reacting, but we're actually planning very strategically so that our goal, our belief, our why are we doing this is actually achieved. And so who is that going to involve? That's actually going to involve everybody in Rhode Island, jumping into the conversation, diving into the conversation, if you will, and then also our professional organizations. Thank you. Our professional organizations. We've come together over this past year several times to talk about what opportunities are there, where are the leverage points where each organization can help to move this forward to make sure that we're achieving what we're trying to achieve. And we have a lot of national partners that are helping us as well, that cross over our borders into New England and across the whole country. And so we have a lot of people very interested in what's going on in Rhode Island. We're very excited about our relationship that was just announced last month with our partner, the Learning Accelerator, who is helping us with that deep strategic planning, bringing in other national folks to help us with that, and supporting us all along the way. And so what are the right leverage points for all of those different players and people involved in the conversation? What is the right leverage point for this group? What is the right leverage point for the Department of Ed? What is the right leverage point for RISD and Highlander? What is the right leverage point for our business community? We need to think about all of those different players and how they can each and all impact the work that we're trying to achieve. Our audience that's watching on TV may wonder, how can I get involved? How can I make a difference? I'm a parent, I'm busy, I have lots of things going on. There's a lot of different ways that we can make sure that voice is heard from all of our different stakeholders that are involved and highly invested into it. And I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. Some of those very concrete ways that you can get involved is contribute to the new strategic plan that we're working on at the Department of Ed. We're at the end of our 5-year cycle, and we're just starting our new plan. And you're going to be hearing a lot about that strategic planning because it's not coming from the Department of Ed, it's really coming from all Rhode Islanders. And there are going to be lots and lots of opportunities for people to be involved in that conversation from now until the spring when the plan is finalized and put into place. Join the state leadership in digital learning and online conversation. We're fortunate to have support, as I mentioned, from folks outside of the state of Rhode Island, and the Friday Institute has put together an online opportunity to have a conversation. So folks can be involved in a conversation without actually coming and having to sit physically in this room with us, but they can contribute to that conversation. So if people are interested in that or joining the coalition that I alluded to there, certainly contact me at the Department of Ed and we can make sure that you are involved in that conversation. Attending our conference. We're super excited about our 3rd annual Innovation Powered by Technology Conference, which will be at the Convention Center here in Providence on October 25th. And we're super excited about the lineup. I'll speak a little bit more about that in a moment, but we have some fabulous guests that are going to be joining us. We have some fabulous educators that have already agreed to present and share some of the experiences that they've had in the classroom and some of the things that they've learned in their process. And we have a fabulous panel of students that are going to be joining us and contributing their voice to the conversation as well.
If I could, I know I didn't want to interrupt you.
That's
but
okay.
You might want to catch your breath. And I do want to say a few words about the conference. I've attended both of the original conferences, and if anyone really wants to know what's happening in education around the country, this is the place to be. It's no charge. It's primarily attended by teachers, administrators,
Family members,
students, and the
business
people
leaders.
who make up the agenda are absolutely remarkable, because when you think about a crowd of maybe 1,000 people that'll be at the convention center, there's a lot of people who want to present to that audience. So it gives RIDE the opportunity to cull out the best presentations in terms of what's happening and what's happening in the future. And some of the companies that are involved in developing the advanced technology, some of the things you'll see, it's absolutely amazing. So I would encourage, and it's no charge.
It's free.
On a Saturday, I believe.
It's Saturday, October 25th.
And it's a great opportunity for educators to rub elbows with their counterparts. And I have to say that there's a lot of very, very dedicated teachers in Rhode Island who have spent their personal time to come to this conference. Also, there was another conference that earlier in the year we had. It was not by RIDE, but it was
by the Highlander Institute.
Highlander Institute,
Yep.
Great conference. So what I'm impressed with is that hundreds and hundreds of these teachers will show up on a Saturday on their own time to improve their skills and develop a repertoire of new tools to deal with in terms of developing their students. So this is a great this is the best conference that I've ever been to in terms of leading edge tools and techniques for education. So I just wanted to put in a little plug for
Thank
that
you.
because it is a
Appreciate that.
great conference.
Thank you. One of the other things that I want to bring to your attention is the Fuse Rhode Island project, and this was put together by the Highlander Institute, who is just blazing trails in Rhode Island, fabulous partner with the Department of Ed, and thought partners, willing thought partners. And I think that's the key to making this successful, is everybody coming to the table and contributing their greatest strengths to achieve our goal. And so I will let Dana talk in just a moment about the Fuse Rhode Island project, and she can share some of the exciting things that are happening there. But I also wanted to mention, Senator O'Neill, you talked about the conference being a fabulous opportunity for educators to come together and have that conversation and hear about techniques and strategies that other educators are doing. But we also have in Rhode Island this really lovely conversation that's happening online through Twitter. This EdChat Rhode Island conversation happens every Sunday evening, and was put together by one of our principals, Don Miller, at Shea High School, who found the need. And when he put this together, it actually it was the first statewide EdChat, and served as a model for other states to look at and to think about and to try out. And it's just blossomed and exploded from there. So I encourage you to take a look Sunday evenings. It happens at 8 o'clock, I believe, on Sunday evenings. And you join virtually, you have a conversation, you can be in your pajamas with your slippers on and have that conversation. The last conversation just last evening was around what does it mean to personalize education for each and every student. And so people come together differently around professional development and around conversations. And the last way that you can be involved in this, that I'm going to share today, that's certainly not the last exhausted list, but talk about it. Have the conversation at the dinner table with students, have the conversation with colleagues, have the conversation and get involved and find out what's happening. Because the way that education is going to look is very different from what we all as adults experienced when we were going through school. And so get involved in the conversation is what I encourage. And so now Dana Borelli Murray is the director of Highlander Institute, and I invited her to share a little bit about the Fuse Rhode Island project, and this is just fabulous. We're super excited about it.
Thanks, Holly, and thank you guys so much for having me here today. Let me talk into the mic for you. So thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Dana Borelli-Murray. I'm the Executive Director of the Highlander Institute. We're an education nonprofit located right down the street in Providence, and we have been around in many iterations for a long time, but really always centered on individualizing education and personalizing learning for every student. And I think that anyone in education would say that that's what everyone's been trying to do for a long time, and it's really something that's great to talk about in a room and over a cocktail party, but to really actually do it in a classroom with 25, 26, 28 kids in front of you is a entirely different story. So what we are finding is that personalized learning is finally happening, and it's happening because of this base called blended learning. And blended learning is the idea and the spirit of using technologies, new technologies, to personalize and to make learning more student-centered and to further what happens in education for students. So if you're going to use a computer as a word processor, then you might as well just use a word processor. If you're going to use a smartboard as a chalkboard, you might as well just use a chalkboard. It's really helping people understand that these technologies are going to further how kids can learn critically, how they can engage in this 21st century learning environment. And we were finding that there is this disconnect. Holly talks a lot about the roadmap and the paths, but truly, because this is all so new, there are many paths to blended learning, and many school leaders and teachers and families are trying to figure out which is the right path for them, and there, up to this point, has not been a lot of focus or support for how to actually make this happen. So that's great that we can buy a school a ton of iPads or Chromebooks, but if they're going to be sitting in a box and only used once in a while, then that's losing the spirit of why you would have these things to center around learning for each student. So Highlander Institute for a long time has been working in classrooms. We provide embedded supports for school districts and for school leaders. We're there right along teachers and helping them to move along with blended learning models and other models as well. And what we found was Rhode Island is ripe and totally in the right place to be this blended learning state. We can actually be the first of its kind for the country, and we have all of the makings to make this really happen. Our geographic size works to our favor. The 66 districts and LEAs that we will have going into this school year works in our favor. You can get every school leader in a room together. Not many states can actually say that. And we have all the capacity that RIDE has worked so tirelessly for around the wireless initiatives and wiring and everything that's going along with this. It has really laid the foundation to make Rhode Island a special place where we can really make blended learning stick. So my organization, through the generous funding of the Learning Accelerator, is embarking on this project, this statewide project called Fuse RI. And Fuse isn't an acronym. It's not standing for something. It's really, we think, the term that best describes what we're trying to do. We're igniting and sparking this passion for this new type of learning, but at the same time, we're trying to bring together and fuse, if you will, all of the different districts. And for the first time, we're trying to create an actual web within our state where, people in Burrillville and people at a charter in Providence are working together on the same project, and that we're partnering different districts together to learn from each other and see what path they may be taking in blended learning, which could be very different from their neighbor next door. So we have 3 different parts to this project, and we think that together as a package, this is really going to set Rhode Island on the map. And the first piece is this needs assessment, this readiness that we're helping every district with. Every single district and LEA in the state has signed on that they want to be a part of this project. So number one, it's showing you that people really want this change and want to see how it can affect learning in their district. So we are going in, this is all free, by the way, this is not, this is all through funding and fundraising on our part, but we're going in and really helping school leaders